She wasn't supposed to sit next to me. That's what I kept thinking. Out of every empty seat on that late-night flight, she chose the one beside mine, and somehow it felt deliberate. The cabin lights had dimmed to a soft gold, the kind that made reflections in the windows look more like ghosts than people. I could hear the hum of the engines, the faint clink of ice from the drink cart, and the slow rhythm of her breathing. She smelled faintly of citrus and something warmer. Not perfume exactly, but skin after a long day. She turned slightly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, and gave me a polite smile, the kind that was supposed to be nothing, but it stayed in the air longer than it should have. "First time flying this late?" she asked. Her voice had that calm confidence of someone who'd learned to talk softly and still be heard. "Yeah," I said. "Couldn't sleep anyway." She nodded, as if she understood something I didn't say. The flight attendant passed by, reminding us to fasten our seatbelts, but she hadn't buckled hers. She just let the strap rest across her lap, fingers tracing the metal clasp. The gesture shouldn't have meant anything, but I couldn't stop watching it. When the turbulence hit, mild at first, she finally reached for the buckle. Her hand brushed mine by accident, and for a second she froze. Our eyes met. She laughed quietly, a little embarrassed, a little deflecting. "Guess I should listen to instructions." Her laugh wasn't rehearsed. It had cracks in it, like something that used to be effortless but had learned restraint. "Some rules are worth breaking," I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me then, really looked, not like someone glancing across a row of strangers, but like she was trying to remember where she knew me from. I felt my throat tighten. "What's your name?" she asked, still watching me. "Eli." She repeated it once under her breath, testing it quietly. Then she said, "I'm Mara." The plane steadied again, but it didn't matter. The air between us was already off balance. She reached for her drink, a small glass of red wine. When she lifted it, the light caught on the curve of her wrist, the faint shimmer of her ringless hand. She wasn't the type you could easily place. Her age showed only in the way she carried herself, unhurried, unbothered by the need to be noticed. But I noticed anyway. "Are you heading home?" she asked. "Not really. Just leaving something behind." She smiled like she understood that, too. "We all do, eventually." Her voice was steady, but her fingers fidgeted with the stem of the glass. A pause stretched, long enough to make the silence feel personal. She shifted slightly closer, maybe just because the aisle was narrow, maybe not. Her knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. Outside the window, clouds drifted past like slow smoke. The flight attendant's voice came over the speaker again, telling everyone to stay seated until the turbulence cleared. But Mara leaned in, just enough for her shoulder to touch mine. She didn't speak. I could feel the warmth of her arm, the quiet pulse beneath her skin. When she finally whispered, her voice barely reached me over the engine's hum. "You're too young to look this restless." I turned toward her, searching for something to say, but the overhead lights flicked on suddenly. A shadow crossed her face. Not fear, just recognition. Like she'd almost said too much. Then she straightened her seatbelt, fastened it this time, and looked straight ahead. The flight attendant stopped beside us, tray in hand. "Would either of you like anything else to drink?" Mara smiled politely, her voice calm again. "No, thank you." But under the small table light, her fingers still trembled, just slightly, against the armrest we shared. And I couldn't tell if she was steadying herself, or me. The plane had gone quiet. Most passengers were asleep. The cabin lights dimmed again. I'd pretended to be reading, a book open on my lap, but I hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. Mara was beside me, half leaning toward the window, her profile softened by the low light. Every few seconds, her reflection appeared faintly against the glass. A ghost image, half there, half gone. She spoke without turning. "You remind me of someone I used to know." I waited, unsure if she wanted me to ask. "Someone younger?" I said. That made her glance over. "Someone braver," she said quietly. "He used to talk like you do, as if the world might listen." Her tone wasn't playful this time. It was somewhere between remembering and regretting. I didn't push, but I watched her fingers trace the edge of the armrest again. The same nervous rhythm as before. "Was he someone you loved?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Someone I should have loved better." I wanted to ask what that meant, but her voice had changed. Softer, a little distant. I could tell she wasn't here anymore. She was somewhere in that memory. The engines hummed beneath our feet. A steward passed by, checking belts and tray tables, and for a moment I caught the look Mara gave him. Polite, detached, practiced. The look of someone used to pretending they were fine. When he moved on, her shoulders eased. She turned to me again. "What about you, Eli? You running from something?" I laughed once. Maybe just time. Her eyes searched mine for a second longer than they should have. "That's the one thing you'll never outrun," she murmured. I didn't know what came over me, but I reached for the water on her tray, handing it to her before realizing she hadn't asked. My hand brushed hers. Warm, deliberate, and she didn't move away. Her skin was soft, but cool, like she'd been holding herself together too long. She looked down, then back at me. "You should be careful with moments like that." "Why?" "Because someone might start believing them mean something." Her words lingered. My pulse kicked up. I didn't know if she was warning me, or herself. She leaned in slightly, voice quieter now. "You don't know what it's like when people start looking at you like you should have stopped wanting things." Her confession hit harder than I expected. Not dramatic, just raw. The space between us shrank, her shoulder grazing my arm again, her breath faintly warm against my neck. "I don't think wanting makes you wrong," I said. Mara turned her face toward me, eyes dark in the low light. "It makes me obvious." The plane jolted slightly, just enough to make her grab my arm. Her fingers dug in, instinctive, then loosened, but she didn't pull away. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Her hand stayed there, her thumb resting against the inside of my wrist. The pulse between us felt louder than the engines. When she finally withdrew, she smiled. That same careful, half-restrained smile from earlier. "Sorry," she said softly. "Turbulence." But she still hadn't let go completely. Her fingertips lingered a beat longer than necessary, enough to say what neither of us dared to. And for the first time that night, I stopped pretending I didn't feel it too. Somewhere over the Atlantic, the lights brightened again. Too sudden, too white. It broke the spell that had been holding the space between us together. Mara blinked, adjusting. "They always do this right when people start sleeping," she muttered, rubbing her eyes. I smiled. "Maybe they don't want anyone dreaming too long." She gave a small laugh, but her eyes drifted down, to where our hands were still too close. Her fingers twitched, almost like she noticed it the same moment I did. She didn't move them. Neither did I. A notification buzzed faintly from her phone on the tray. She hesitated before turning it over. For a second, her face changed. Not anger, exactly, but something heavier. She silenced the screen quickly. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded too fast. "It's nothing. Just people who still think I'm someone I used to be." Before I could ask what she meant, a familiar voice echoed down the aisle. "Mara." Her whole body stiffened. I turned, and a man in a suit was standing a few rows up, smiling uncertainly. "It is you." I wasn't sure. Her lips parted, caught somewhere between surprise and dread. "David, I didn't realize you were—" "London trip," he said easily, stepping closer. "Didn't expect to see you here." His gaze flicked toward me, curious. I could feel Mara recalibrating, smoothing her tone, finding that practiced composure again. "This is Eli," she said, her voice even. "We were just talking." David nodded politely, but something in his smile felt sharp. "Of course." He lingered just a little too long before returning to his seat. When he was gone, Mara exhaled. Quiet, like she'd been holding her breath for minutes. "Friend?" I asked carefully. "Once," she said. "Someone who thought I owed him more than I could give." She looked straight ahead, but her voice had gone thin around the edges. "He's good at reminding me of that." Silence stretched. The air between us felt charged again. Not romantic, not exactly, but fragile. I wanted to reach out, but her posture warned me not to. Then the seatbelt sign blinked on, another small tremor shaking the plane. Mara gripped the armrest again, and this time I didn't wait. My hand found hers. She didn't resist. She just looked down at our joined fingers, as if surprised by how natural it felt. Her voice barely carried. "You shouldn't." "Maybe not," I said. She turned then, her face inches from mine. I could see the faintest tremor in her bottom lip, the reflection of the cabin light in her eyes. "This," she started, then stopped. Her voice broke slightly. "You don't know what this could cost me." Her words were warning enough, but she didn't move away. The space between us shrank, her breath brushing my cheek, her hand tightening in mine like a secret she couldn't let go of. For a suspended heartbeat, I thought she'd close the distance. The hum of the engines faded. The world narrowed to her pulse against my skin. Then a soft ding. The flight attendant appeared beside us, smiling. "Excuse me, ma'am. Your friend up front asked if you'd like to switch seats." Mara blinked, slow, almost disoriented. "No," she said too quickly. "I'm fine here." The attendant nodded and moved on. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Her hand was still in mine. She didn't reclaim it, not yet. When she finally looked at me again, her eyes said everything her words refused to. This shouldn't be happening. But it already is. The hours stretched thin. The plane cabin had gone dark again. A cocoon of low murmurs and engine hum. Most passengers were asleep, but neither of us had closed our eyes. Mara sat with her arms folded tight, staring at the seat back ahead. Her hand, the same one that had been in mine minutes ago, now rested stiffly on her lap. The tension between us wasn't quiet anymore. It had turned heavy, electric. "You're awfully quiet," I said. She gave a small, humorless smile. "It's safer that way." Her voice carried the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep. Something heavier, the weight of being careful for too long. I leaned a little closer, my shoulder brushing hers. "You don't have to be." She turned slowly, meeting my eyes. In the dim light, hers looked darker, deeper, like they could hide a whole history behind them. "You have no idea what happens when I stop being careful," she whispered. I should have laughed it off, but I didn't. I just looked at her. The tiny scar above her eyebrow, the way her throat moved when she swallowed. Every small thing about her felt suddenly unbearably close. "Mara," I said, low, steady. "I think you want to stop pretending you don't feel this." She froze, her breath catching. "You shouldn't say that." "But it's true." The air between us thickened. She shifted in her seat, turning slightly toward me, and I felt the faint brush of her knee against mine. "Eli," she said softly, warning in her tone, but not distance. "Tell me you don't feel it," I said. "Just say it once, and I'll stop." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her throat tightened visibly, her fingers gripping the armrest. Finally, she whispered, "You make it hard to stay the person I'm supposed to be." Her words hit deeper than any confession could have. I leaned closer, voice barely a breath from her ear. "Then stop trying to be her." She turned sharply toward me, eyes wide. Anger and desire tangled together. "You think this is simple? You think I can just—" She stopped, shaking her head, her hair falling loose around her face. Without thinking, I reached up and brushed it back, tucking a strand behind her ear. My fingers lingered longer than they should have. Her skin was warm beneath them. She didn't move. For a moment, she just looked at me. Eyes unblinking, lips parted slightly. Then she exhaled, slow and uneven. "Don't do that," she said. But her voice cracked on the last word. "Do what?" "Make me remember what it feels like to want something I can't have." Her hand came up then, not to push me away, but to steady herself against my chest. Her palm rested there, feeling the rise and fall of my breath. I could feel hers matching mine. The engines roared beneath us. The cabin lights flickered. We were inches apart now, the air between us trembling. "Mara," She looked up at me, eyes bright and uncertain. Don't. But her hand didn't move. The distance between us shrank to a heartbeat. Her breath brushing my lips, my hand still at her jaw. The silence stretched, ready to break, and then, ding. The intercom crackled, the pilot's voice breaking through. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent shortly. Mara's eyes flicked shut, as if the sound itself hurt. When she opened them again, she looked at me. Steady, broken, alive. This doesn't leave this flight, she whispered. But neither of us moved away. The descent began, and with it came the shift, that slow awareness that whatever this was, it couldn't stay suspended in the clouds forever. Mara hadn't spoken since the intercom interrupted us. Her hands were folded neatly now, expression neutral. Too neutral. I could tell she was rebuilding the distance brick by brick. But something in her still trembled. The way her thumb rubbed the edge of her seatbelt, how she kept swallowing hard without saying a word. When the seatbelt sign turned off, she exhaled. I should tell you something, she said finally. My chest tightened. You don't owe me? No, she cut in, voice soft but steady. I do. She looked at me, really looked, and for a second she seemed older, not in years but in weight. I wasn't supposed to be on this flight, she said. It was booked for someone else. My assistant. She switched it last minute. I frowned. So David, she said, the name sharp as glass. Wasn't supposed to be here either. He follows me sometimes. Checks the manifests. Her voice cracked on that last word. I blinked. He follows you? She nodded once, eyes distant. He used to be my boss. And more once. I ended it a year ago. He didn't. The air inside the cabin seemed to thin. I didn't know what to say. The mix of protectiveness and jealousy hit too fast. Does he know I'm? He knows you exist now. She laughed softly, bitterly. He's very good at pretending things don't bother him, until they do. I could see it in the way her shoulders curved inward slightly, the old instinct to shrink herself small enough to disappear. It made something in me twist. I reached out without thinking, resting my hand over hers. She flinched, not from me, but from the gesture itself, as if the kindness was harder to bear than the danger. Mara, I said quietly, you're not responsible for his behavior. Her hand stayed under mine. Her pulse was fast, her breathing shallow. You don't understand, she whispered. I can't afford another scandal. People already think. She stopped. Think what? That I use people. That I can't keep boundaries. The honesty in her voice was raw, almost painful. I tightened my grip slightly, forcing her to look at me. Then let them think what they want. Her eyes flashed, part disbelief, part something wilder. You don't mean that. I do. For a long second, neither of us breathed. Then, she stood suddenly, too fast. The hem of her jacket brushed my arm as she stepped past me into the aisle. Mara, she stopped, hand on the back of the seat. You shouldn't make promises on a plane, Eli. Everything feels easier when you're this high up. Her voice was shaking now, barely holding. Before I could respond, David's voice drifted from a few rows ahead. Mara, a word when we land? She froze, her back still to me. Then, slowly, she turned halfway, meeting my eyes. Not pleading, not apologizing, just knowing. Her lips parted, voice barely audible. Don't get off before me. The way she said it, low, final, laced with fear and need, felt like a confession and a command all at once. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a flirtation lost in altitude. It was about to cost her something real. The landing was rough. A jolt, a shudder, a collective breath held too long. When the wheels met the ground, a ripple of relief moved through the cabin. But between us, nothing eased. Mara didn't move. Her hands were still folded, knuckles pale, eyes locked straight ahead as if seeing through the seat in front of her. The air smelled of recycled coffee and rain from the tarmac, thick and stale. When the seatbelt light went off, passengers began standing, reaching for bags, stretching limbs. I waited. She didn't. Then, slowly, She turned to me. "Stay until they clear out," she whispered. Her voice was tight, trembling at the edges. I nodded. Row by row, people shuffled past us. Chatter, laughter, the soft thuds of luggage wheels. Eventually, the aisle emptied. Only the sound of engines winding down filled the space. Mara exhaled for the first time in minutes. "He'll wait by the gate. He always does." She reached for her bag, but her hand shook. I caught it before she could pull away. "Then don't go yet." Her eyes lifted, sharp, vulnerable. "Eli, this isn't your fight." "It is now," I said. She almost smiled, but it broke halfway. "You're too young to carry someone else's damage. Then let me carry yours just this once." She looked at me for a long time, as if weighing whether to believe that kind of foolishness. The silence pressed close. Then she set her bag down and leaned back into her seat, shoulders softening. "You have no idea how dangerous this is," she murmured. I leaned closer, the space between us shrinking until I could feel her breath against my cheek. "Then tell me to stop." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she turned her face toward me, slowly, cautiously, until our foreheads nearly touched. The closeness wasn't planned. It just happened like gravity had made a decision before we did. Her perfume was faint now, mixed with the scent of jet fuel and tired air, but somehow it felt intimate. "Eli," she whispered. My name came out like a sigh she'd been holding in all flight. "Tell me," I said, "if I walk away now, will you pretend this never happened?" She looked at me, eyes bright with something between fear and want. "I've been pretending my whole life. I don't want to anymore." Her hand came up, fingertips grazing my jaw, tracing the line beneath my ear. The touch was tentative, searching, like she was learning me by feel. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it closer. "Then don't." The world outside blurred, ground crew lights flashing across the windows, the thump of luggage below us. But in our small row of seats, time stalled. Her breath brushed against my lips, close enough that I could taste the warmth of her words before she spoke them. "This doesn't survive daylight," she said. "Then don't let daylight in." Her eyes flickered shut, and for one suspended moment, not quite a kiss, not quite restraint, we hovered on the edge of something irreversible. Then she exhaled, stepped back, and rested her forehead against mine. "You have to let me walk away first." I nodded, though every part of me ached not to. When she finally stood, she looked down at me one last time, that same half-smile from hours ago, but stripped of its mask. "Now you understand," she said quietly. "It was never about the flight. It was about the fall." And then she walked down the aisle calm, composed, leaving me in a cabin that suddenly felt far too still. Rain streaked the terminal windows like melting glass. The crowd moved around me in practiced chaos. Luggage wheels, boarding calls, the low hum of lives continuing. But all I could hear was the echo of her last words. It was never about the flight. It was about the fall. She'd disappeared into the crowd 10 minutes ago. Maybe 15. I'd lost track. My body still felt the vibration of landing. That hollow ache that comes when momentum stops but your heart doesn't. I told myself to move on. To walk out, call a cab. Let this dissolve into one of those travel stories people never tell right. But then, Eli. Her voice, soft, steady. From behind me, I turned. Mara stood there, umbrella in one hand, her hair slightly damp from the open gate doors. No more performance in her posture, no mask of calm professionalism. Just her, tired, alive, and somehow deciding to stay. "You didn't let me walk away first," she said. "I tried," I said. "Didn't work." Her lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something that could become one if the world allowed. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she stepped closer, until the distance between us was nothing but breath and hesitation. "I thought you'd leave," she said. "I almost did," I admitted. Then I realized I'd regret not finding out what comes after landing. That earned me a real smile, small, uneven, but real. She looked down, exhaled. "This shouldn't make sense." "It doesn't," I said. "But it still feels right." The tension that had carried us through the night softened, turned into something quieter. Not fire, but warmth. The kind that lasts longer. She set her umbrella against the wall, and before I could say anything, she stepped in and rested her forehead against my shoulder. It wasn't dramatic, no cinematic music, no audience. Just the steady press of her body against mine. Her breathing syncing with mine like we'd done this before in another life. For a while, we stayed like that. When she finally pulled back, her hand lingered on my chest, fingers tracing the outline of the seatbelt mark I still had from the flight. "Still fastened," she murmured. "Not anymore," I said, covering her hand with mine. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that doesn't hide anything. "You make trouble sound like peace. And you make peace sound like something worth chasing," I said. Her thumb brushed over my pulse. "Then don't chase. Just stay a while." So I did. We sat together on one of those cold plastic benches near the window. Her hand resting in mine, silent, steady. Outside, the rain softened into mist, and a new plane rose into the sky, its lights blinking in and out of the clouds. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The silence between us finally felt like a place to rest, not something to escape. After a long while, she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You can stop running from time now," and I believed her. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?